why your cat prefers one person in the house, and it has nothing to do with who feeds it most. 3, 4, even 5 people can live in the same house, and yet the cat doesn't treat them all the same. With one, it might only come around when it's hungry. With another, it might play for a good long while. And with a third, it simply lies down next to them and falls asleep without a fuss. That doesn't mean it loves the rest of the household any less. It means that around that particular person, something in the cat relaxes in a different way. In this video, I'm going to explain how your cat chooses the person it trusts most in a house with several people living in it. And I want to tell you up front, it has nothing to do with tricks, with who gives it the most treats, or with pure chance. It has to do with a series of signals we almost never notice, because they're too subtle for the human eye. If you really want to understand this very particular relationship you have with your cat, stick around until the end, and while you're at it, drop a like and subscribe to the channel because this is just getting started and it only gets more interesting from here. Why the cat doesn't choose the way we think it does. Most people assume a cat picks someone in a simple way. Whoever gives it the most food, whoever pets it the most, or whoever gives it the most attention during the day. But feline logic actually works in a completely different way, and it tends to surprise everyone living under the same roof. The cat doesn't respond to effort or rewards the way we usually imagine. Very often, its preference lands precisely on the person who pushes the least, who calls it by name the least, and who doesn't try to force closeness all the time. From our human perspective, this seems illogical. But from the cat's point of view, it's a fully conscious decision, based on observation that can go on for weeks, even months. The cat doesn't choose whoever wants it closest. It chooses the person in front of whom it doesn't have to prove anything, react, or control the situation. For a cat, it's essential to be able to be in someone's presence without tension, without needing to stay alert the whole time, and without the fear that at any moment it'll get picked up, hugged, or forced into contact. It doesn't want right then. It's precisely in those moments that the cat starts identifying who it truly feels safe around, because for a cat, safety outweighs food, play, or even affection. What the cat notices without us realizing it, your cat observes far more than we imagine. It pays attention to the way you move around the house, the tone of your voice, how you react to an unexpected noise, and even whether you're capable of sitting beside it without expecting anything in return. All these small signals add up, and in the feline world, they form a picture that's much more important than it looks, because they let the cat assess whether someone is predictable and calm. Often, the chosen person doesn't even realize they've been evaluated this way and deemed safe. They just assume the cat likes that corner of the couch or that time of day. But in reality, the cat doesn't choose places. It chooses states of mind. And the state of calm, quiet, and freedom from pressure is priceless to it. That's why it can lie down next to just one person and fall into a deep sleep. Not because it's after warmth or physical comfort, but because around that person it doesn't need to stay alert and can allow itself to relax completely. It's exactly in those moments that a bond starts forming, which carries special weight for the cat, because that's where it recognizes, for the first time, someone in front of whom it can simply be itself. A cat can have several relationships at the same time. A cat doesn't build bonds the same way a person does, because for a cat, attachment isn't a single, closed-off emotion. It's a collection of different experiences it can distribute among several people. That's why, in the same house, it can feel close to more than one resident, and each of them may have the impression of being the most important one, even though the cat is actually building a different kind of relationship with each person. One person might represent movement and energy for it, another might be associated with the daily routine, and a third might simply represent those pleasant, predictable moments it values so much. The fact that a cat approaches several people doesn't mean a lack of attachment or chaos in its inner world. If anything, it shows its ability to adapt its behavior to each individual. With one person, it might be more active, initiating play or contact more often. With another, it might show up just for a moment. And with a third, it might stick around a good while without any obvious signs of interest. Each of these relationships serves a different function, and none of them cancels out the others. This is where a lot of people get it wrong, because we try to measure feline affection in black and white, assuming that if the cat pays attention to someone else, our own place is somehow at risk. But a cat doesn't compare people against each other or rank them as better or worse. It treats each relationship as something independent. It can value the presence of several people at once without seeing any contradiction in that. Before we move on, if this is making you think about your own cat and how it behaves with each person in your house, tell me in the comments. Do you have one of those cats that splits its time between several people? The freedom of not having to pretend. At a certain point, the relationship between a cat and a person stops being based only on direct contact and starts being about something much harder to notice: the freedom to behave without pretending. The cat clearly shows who it doesn't need to put on an act for, even though to us those differences are almost imperceptible. Around that particular person, it can change position without rushing, stretch out more calmly, settle into a less watchful posture, and react more slowly to stimuli around it, as if everything around it slowed down a little. It's exactly in those moments that you can tell the cat isn't just tolerating someone's presence. It's treating it as the natural backdrop of its life. It doesn't seek attention, it doesn't initiate contact in any obvious way, and it doesn't constantly check the other person's reaction, because it simply doesn't need to. It behaves as if it were alone, even though it isn't. And for a cat, that's an exceptional state, because it means a total absence of inner tension and complete freedom. The person around whom the cat is fully itself often doesn't even notice this difference, because from the outside it looks like an ordinary presence without much emotion involved. And yet, it's precisely the absence of obvious signals that matters most here, because the cat doesn't feel the need to communicate or control the situation. It can get up and leave without hurrying. It can stay and do nothing. It can move somewhere else for no apparent reason. And all of this happens without tension and without watching for the other person's reaction. With the rest of the household, on the other hand, the cat usually behaves differently. Even if it looks just as calm at first glance, its body stays more alert. Its movements are shorter, its reactions quicker, as if it's always ready for the situation to change. Around that one particular person, though, that state of readiness gradually fades away, and the cat allows itself to be completely natural, with no need to adjust to anyone's expectations. The cat's internal clock. Over time, the cat begins to sync up with one particular person's daily rhythm, even if no one consciously notices it. I'm not talking about feeding times or specific actions, but about small repetitions that carry enormous weight for a cat. It quickly learns what time someone gets up, when they leave the house, when they come back, and at what pace they move through the space. And it starts adjusting its own activity around that. It might show up in the same room at similar times, change where it rests when that person's rhythm changes, or pick its moments of activity so they line up with that specific individual's presence. For the cat, this synchronization is no accident, because its world rests on repetition and predictability, and a person whose rhythm is easy to read becomes a natural point of reference. From the outside, this often looks like plain coincidence, as if the cat just happened to show up whenever someone was around, or vanished whenever the house emptied out. In reality, the cat is very deliberately weaving itself into that person's day, not to draw attention to itself, but to function within a familiar, recognizable pattern. The more stable someone's rhythm is, the easier it is for the cat to fold itself into it. And here's something curious. The cat doesn't need to be nearby all the time for this synchronization to exist. It's enough for it to know when that person appears, when they leave, and roughly how long their presence usually lasts. That sense of regularity leads the cat to start planning its own activities around another person's day, as if the two of them were moving to the same rhythm. At this point, the relationship stops being a collection of individual interactions and starts to resemble a quiet arrangement, where the cat and the person function alongside each other in sync. The cat doesn't need signals or encouragement at this stage, because the other person's sheer predictability is enough to fold them into its everyday world. The voice it recognizes above all others. A cat perceives the world largely through sound, but it doesn't respond to it the way a human does. It doesn't care so much about the pitch of a voice or the words being said, but about the whole set of signals hidden inside them. Intonation, speaking speed, pauses, and small shifts in tone give the cat far more information than the content itself, which it doesn't understand in a human sense anyway. Over time, one particular voice starts to stand out above the rest and becomes easy for the cat to recognize, even when it can't see the person speaking. the cat is able to react to that voice from another room, from behind a door, or from down the hallway. Not because it was called, but because it recognizes a familiar sound pattern. And it doesn't need to be a special call or hearing its name. Everyday speech is enough, which over time becomes something predictable and neutral to the cat. That voice doesn't carry tension, sudden changes, or any pressure, so the cat doesn't need to respond defensively or stay on alert. With everyone else in the house, it might hear similar words, but it perceives them differently because the way they're said changes. For the cat, those differences are exactly what matter, because they let it judge whether a sound is simply part of the background or worth paying special attention to. One person's voice may be soothing to it, another's may be neutral, and a third's may cause a bit of mild tension, even if it sounds completely normal from the outside. Over time, the cat associates a specific voice with a predictable situation, and that makes its reaction more and more subtle. It might stop lifting its head, not change position, or just move its ears slightly as if to make clear it knows who's nearby. To us, that looks like no reaction at all. But to the cat, it's a sign of full recognition that doesn't require any further action. The scent that becomes part of its world. A cat perceives smells in a way humans can't fully grasp. Because for a cat, scent isn't just an extra layer on top of reality. It's the foundation of it. Smell doesn't just tell the cat about the presence of another being. It also lets it figure out whether something is familiar, foreign, new, or already long accepted. As the days go by, a specific person's scent stops being something external to the cat and starts becoming part of its own space. I'm not talking about perfume or cosmetics, but the natural scent that soaks into clothing, furniture, and everyday objects. The cat draws a very clear line between smells that are part of its world and ones that only show up briefly. When someone's scent stays present in a space, the cat starts treating it as something permanent, requiring neither reaction nor control. That's why it can lie down on one particular person's clothes, rub against their belongings, or seek out the spots where that scent is strongest, even when that person isn't around. For the cat, this isn't about seeking contact. It's about maintaining the continuity of its own scent-based world. Whatever smells familiar stops being a stimulus and becomes background. A scent the cat has already accepted doesn't trigger defensive reactions or curiosity because it doesn't represent any change. The cat doesn't need to check it, analyze it, or mark it because it's already part of the space it considers its own. It's a very subtle process that unfolds slowly and without any dramatic signals, which is why it usually goes unnoticed by people. The moment someone's scent gets folded into the cat's world this way, that person stops being an outsider and becomes part of the environment where the cat feels at ease. When something changes, the cat notices first. There are moments when a person behaves differently than usual. They move more slowly, speak more quietly, or are simply less present. And the cat is able to pick up on that change before anyone else in the house, not because it understands tiredness or illness in a human sense, but because it registers with extraordinary precision any deviation from what it already knows as normal. For the cat, what matters is the difference, not the cause. And that difference becomes a signal that something in its environment calls for a different kind of behavior on its part. In those moments, the cat often adjusts its own reactions, though very subtly and without obvious gestures. It might come around more often without demanding attention, or on the contrary, keep more distance, as if not wanting to disturb the state it's picking up on. These reactions aren't random. The cat instinctively adapts to that person's shifted energy, treating it as part of an environment that has, for the moment, become less stable. Interestingly, it doesn't react this way toward just anyone who's tired or down. This change in behavior mainly shows up toward the person whose presence genuinely matters to its day-to-day life, because only in that case is the deviation from the norm clearly noticeable to the cat. If someone doesn't hold an important place in the cat's world, a bad day for that person triggers no reaction at all, because it doesn't disturb an order the cat already recognizes. When the cat approaches without anyone calling it, there are moments when a cat decides to approach a person without anyone calling it, without any incentive, and without any prior signal. And in the feline world, that instant carries a particular meaning. By nature, a cat doesn't act on impulse and rarely does something without a reason. That's why each of these approaches is the result of an internal decision, not a response to an external stimulus. It's not about needing contact or trying to get attention. It's about choosing the place and the company that feel right to it in that moment. A cat can show up next to a person at moments that, at first glance, are nothing special, when nothing in particular is happening and no one is trying to interact with it. That's exactly when its decision is clearest, because it isn't responding to any invitation or expectation. The cat chooses the moment and it chooses the closeness, treating it as something natural rather than forced. That approach doesn't have to mean spending a long time together or showing obvious signs of presence. Sometimes it's enough for the cat to lie down nearby, pause for a moment, or simply walk through the room and slow its pace, as if it wanted to mark its presence without committing to anything more. For the cat, that's already enough to confirm that person still holds an important place in its world. And it doesn't do this out of habit or routine, but because in that particular moment, it considers that presence fitting. From a human perspective, this gesture usually goes unnoticed or gets written off as pure coincidence. But in the feline world, there's no such thing as coincidence. Every appearance without an apparent reason is a decision that says more than any obvious behavior ever could. Closing what it means to be its person. Being the person a cat chooses in a house where several people live doesn't depend on meeting certain conditions or making the right gestures at the right time. The cat doesn't keep a checklist of behaviors to tick off, nor does it assign that role in some easily noticeable way. It's more of a process that unfolds slowly, without clear boundaries, and whose outcome only becomes visible once you look at the whole picture from a bit of distance. The cat doesn't communicate this relationship directly because it doesn't need to. It doesn't have to confirm or announce anything. Because for the cat, being someone's person means something very simple: a presence that doesn't disrupt its world, doesn't create chaos, and doesn't demand constant attention. Someone who's naturally part of its everyday life without forcing anything. From our human point of view, this kind of bond can seem unremarkable, without clear signals or moments easy to label as special. But it's exactly in that ordinariness where its real meaning lies, because the cat isn't after intensity or constant interaction. It's after stability, predictability, and a presence that doesn't dominate its world. Being its person doesn't mean exclusivity or being the most important thing in every situation. It means, rather, holding a place that doesn't need to be constantly marked, because it's already self-evident. If you made it this far and recognize this story in your own cat, chances are you're already much more to it than just someone who lives in the house. Not because you did anything extraordinary, but simply because you're there. And in a cat's world, that means far more than it seems. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, which of these signs did you recognize first in your own cat?